I'm Dennis Tubergen. This is the Retirement Lifestyle Advocates radio program. Glad you're listening in this week. Hey, joining me momentarily on today's program is Mr. Doug Casey. Doug is the founder of Casey Research. I'm going to get his take on current economic conditions and also talk to him about his recently released book, The Preparation. If you know any young person that is contemplating college, Doug's going to give you a really interesting perspective on today's program. You know, the premise of my new retirement rules book, and after my comments, I'll tell you how you can get a complimentary copy. But one of the premises in that book is that history repeats itself. Or to paraphrase Mark Twain, I believe, if it doesn't repeat itself exactly, at least it rhymes. Presently, there's massive evidence proving this history rhymes hypothesis. When examining rhyming history, there's one economic cycle that stands out. It's the often repeated cycle of inflation followed by deflation. We are now, once again, from my perspective, living through that historical cycle of inflation followed by deflation. Even though this cycle is painful to live through, it repeats. Why? Because human behavior is predictable, and the collective behavior of groups of politicians is even more predictable. Faced with a similar set of facts and circumstances, humans tend to make the same decisions. This statement is even more true when it comes to groups of politicians. When it comes to dealing with government operating deficits, politicians and policymakers have only three options. They can spend less, they can tax more, or they can pursue easy money policies that result in currency creation. When the fiscal problems loom large enough, the collective group of politicians and policymakers have always chosen to pursue easy money policies. That's the beginning of this often repeated historical cycle. Currency creation and easy money policies lead to what initially seems like prosperity. Then that prosperity illusion is followed by inflation, which is ultimately followed by deflation. This cycle can take a long time to complete. Historically speaking, decades are the norm. The new retirement rules book details this cycle in U.S. history. This is the fourth time the United States has moved through this cycle. In my view, we are now teetering between the inflation part of the cycle and the deflation part of the cycle. Currency creation, the beginning of this cycle, has occurred historically in many different ways, largely due to technological innovations. Regardless as to how new currency creation has occurred historically, the end result of currency creation has not changed. This cycle is a fundamental economic truth. Currency creation leads to a prosperity illusion initially, which is then followed by inflation and ultimately gives way to deflation. The cycle has not changed, and the cycle cannot be changed. It really validates the old saying that I'm sure you've heard: the more things change, the more they stay the same. While currency is created at the present time by reducing interest rates in our fractional reserve banking system, or when that fails, via digital entry that creates currency. Currency historically was often created through the debasement of the precious metal coins that circulated. This is not a new phenomenon. We can go all the way back to 50 AD when the Roman Emperor Nero wanted to jumpstart the Roman economy. He understood that currency creation would do that, at least for a time. So the emperor issued an order to collect the denarius coins that circulated as currency and were comprised as silver. Once enough denarius were gathered, they were melted down, and worthless metal alloys were added to the coins to create more coins. This was the Roman Empire equivalent of currency creation or quantitative easing, accomplished through currency debasement. Now, the outcome of this currency creation during the Roman Empire was, again, entirely predictable. A prosperity illusion materialized, followed by inflation, followed by deflation. While this cycle took hundreds of years to run its course, eventually the denarius failed as a currency and the Roman Empire fell. Now, there is an important side note here, and that is that currency evolutions occur slowly, at least at first. It took a long time for the denarius to become a complete fiat currency with no precious metal content. However, once the denarius had no tangible or intrinsic value, it failed relatively quickly. Now let's look at a more recent historic parallel, the Federal Reserve under the direction of Ben Bernanke after the Great Financial Crisis. As another side note, the US dollar had already been a fiat currency since 1971 when the convertibility of US dollars for gold was suspended. Bernanke reduced interest rates to zero in an attempt to jumpstart the economy, but it didn't work. Why? Largely because Americans collectively could not borrow in quantities that would create enough currency to prop up the economy and create another prosperity illusion. So Bernanke did what the Roman emperors eventually did. He created new currency literally out of thin air, but he called it quantitative easing. As a result of this currency creation, a prosperity illusion emerged, only to have it disappear in 2020. The Fed in 2020 very predictably went back to their playbook that now contains just one play: currency creation. The only difference between Bernanke's quantitative easing after the Great Financial Crisis and the quantitative easing in 2020 was the amount of currency created. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve increased from $1 trillion to $2 trillion at the time of the financial crisis. Simple math has us concluding that at that time, the Fed manufactured about $1 trillion in new currency, literally from thin air. In 2020, the Federal Reserve created about $5 trillion from thin air, 5 times what was created at the time of the financial crisis. Again, a prosperity illusion emerged. Real estate prices rocketed higher. Stocks surged. Then, predictably, the prosperity illusion gave way to inflation, and now it seems that deflation is beginning to emerge, at least in real terms. The response of the Federal Reserve has again been predictable. Interest rates have been cut now 1.25% over the past year, despite the fact that it's undeniable that inflation has not been tamed. The jobs market is screaming deflation. There are now more unemployed Americans than job openings for the first time in more than 4 years. And we've recently learned that nearly 1 million jobs that were reported as having been created actually were not. 1 million jobs is one whale of a downward revision. Lower income Americans as well as the middle class are struggling. Theme parks, long an entertainment destination of middle income Americans, are floundering. Six Flags Entertainment has closed 2 of its properties and is looking to sell another. Loan default rates are up. A July survey by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia found that 19% of consumers skip paying bills over the past year just to get by. 47% of consumers cut discretionary spending, and 64% of Gen Zers with student loans used buy now, pay later programs to attempt to bridge a financial gap. The U.S. economy, because of this monetary policy, in my view, is bifurcated. The wealth gap is widening. Expect easy money policies to continue. As I noted earlier, there is only one play in the Federal Reserve's playbook, and that is currency creation. That will likely mean more price inflation on things we have to buy and deflation, at least in real terms, on things that we own. If you haven't yet incorporated this new economic reality into your portfolio management, you'd be wise to consider it. I'll be back after these words with my special guest, Mr. Doug Casey. Hey, thanks for listening in today. I'd like to invite you to get a complimentary copy of my new retirement rules book. The new retirement rules book outlines the historical inflation deflation cycle that I talked about on today's program and offers you specific strategies to consider using in your situation. I'd love to send you a copy of the book absolutely free. All you need to do to get your copy is go to requestyourbook.com. The website again is requestyourbook.com. When you visit the website, just let me know where to send your book, absolutely free. I'll also send you some bonus information as well. So again, requestyourbook.com to get your complimentary copy of the new Retirement Rules book. You are listening to Retirement Lifestyle Advocates Radio. I have the pleasure of chatting once again today with returning guest, Mr. Doug Casey. Doug is a best-selling author many times over. You can read more about his work at internationalman.com. And he also has a terrific podcast on YouTube titled Doug Casey's Take. Doug is also the author of a book titled The Preparation I'm going to talk to him about today. And Matt Smith, who wrote an introduction to the book, described Doug as part Indiana Jones, part Socrates, part James Bond. He's traveled over 75 countries in search of fun and profit. And he said his friends and he sometimes joke that Doug might actually be the most interesting man in the world, but it's only a joke because it's probably true. Doug is an adventurer, a very successful investor, and as I mentioned, a multi-time best-selling author. And Doug, it's certainly a pleasure to have you back on the program today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Dennis. It's nice to be here with you.
So, Doug, I want to just jump in. You recently commented on something that I guess I will come out and describe myself as a capitalist, a purist, if you will, when it comes to capitalism. And we have the government, the Department of Defense, taking a 15% ownership in MP Materials. And for our listeners that may not be familiar, that is a rare earth mineral mining and processing company. And then President Trump recently negotiated a deal to take a 10% ownership in Intel. Seems to me, Doug, that this is a bit of a dangerous precedent. What's your take?
Oh, it's actually worse than that, Dennis, because uh, the government also has a golden share in U.S. Steel and is shaking down NVIDIA for 15% of its sales to China. And Trump is talking about setting up a sovereign wealth fund for the US, which basically means taxpayers' money is going to be used to invest in corporations. And it's a very, very bad, dangerous path we're walking. It follows in the steps of Benito Mussolini of Italy, uh, who coined the word fascism, which is a melding of the state and corporations. And a lot of people confuse that for capitalism and a free market, but it's really antithetical to those things. So, look, there's a lot of things I like about Trump, but that is not one of them.
So, Doug, remind the listeners when this has been tried or experimented with in the past, what's the outcome?
A disaster. Uh, the best example of that is probably Argentina, which is, as you said, I've been to 175 countries and lived in a dozen of them. Argentina is one I'm very familiar with, and Juan Perón, uh, who totally transformed and ruined the economy of Argentina. Argentina was one of the four or five most prosperous countries in the world 100 years ago. Now it's degraded to third world status. But anyway, Perón followed Mussolini's playbook of the state owning shares of everything, the state controlling everything, the state telling corporations what to do, who to hire, at what prices, all this type of thing. This is the essence of economic fascism. Worked out very, very badly. And I'm sad to say that it looks like Trump is guiding the U.S. in that direction. What he should be doing is re-emphasizing his Doge program, firing bureaucrats, eliminating agencies, getting rid of regulations, lowering taxes. That will unleash the economy. And that's the answer to the question, not what's happening now.
Well, Doug, on that note, it seems that now we have $2 trillion operating deficits with the U.S. federal government, literally as far as the eye can see. I think I just read a piece this week that the Congressional Budget Office now estimates the national debt will be 155 trillion by the year 2055. Seems to me we have to have a debt crisis before then. And when you look at who's buying U.S. government bonds? I mean, the maturities are short, and nobody's buying U.S. government bonds for the long term. So, what does the end game look like, and are we at the tipping point?
I don't think I'd even look as far ahead as 2055. This crisis is upon us here and now. And $2 trillion of annual deficits, all of which are financed by the Federal Reserve printing money. It's actually more like $3 trillion. And before Trump is out of office, uh, I think it could go to 4 trillion or 5 trillion because he's spending more money, not less, raising the defense budget from 800 billion to a trillion alone. Interest rates are, I think, likely to go up a lot. Uh, so now listen, there's a lot to be concerned about here, Dennis. There's a great deal to be concerned about. In 2055, look, Social Security, which frankly, I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but it's bankrupt. It's always been a Ponzi scheme where you needed new investors or new participants to bail out the old ones. So, and its sole asset is government debt, and the U.S. government is manifestly bankrupt. But people don't want to look at those things, whether from misguided patriotism or a non-understanding of economics. I don't know.
Doug, if the Federal Reserve continues to become the buyer of last resort of U.S. government debt and really paper over these deficits, at what point does hyperinflation become the dominant economic theme in your view?
Well, that's the problem, because the dollar itself, which you'll remember, they used to say the dollar was as good as gold, and it was at one point. But now it's just a fiat currency. It's an IOU nothing on the part of the US government, which can print up as many of them as it wants via the Federal Reserve. So this has got to end badly. And the government can generate income for itself only through taxes, which are quite high and likely to go higher, by borrowing very hard when there's not much saving in the country, and printing money. And all of these things are a dead end road to nowhere. So listen, it's one thing for me to say how bad things could get. It's I think it's important for we as individuals to determine what we can do so that we're not hurt badly by these things, so that we're not adversely affected by the stupid things that happen in Washington, D.C.
So, Doug, before we talk about your book, The Preparation, give our listeners just maybe a couple things that they should be thinking about in light of this trajectory that is unsustainable and it appears inevitable.
Look, it's gotten harder and harder because the stock market represents real wealth, and that's always been a place to go. But now, with the stock market at all-time highs by every parameter there is, it's dangerous being in the stock market where everybody is. And the bond market is even more dangerous. It's a triple threat to your wealth currency risk, interest rate risk, default risk. Uh, Gold, I've been a gold bug for many, many, many years, and it's treated me really, really well. But now even gold is about where it kind of should be relative to the worth of everything else. So the upside, I mean, yeah, we could see another 5 or 10 to 1 upside on gold. That's possible for a number of reasons that we can't go into now. But it's no longer a giveaway bargain. So where do you run and hide at this point? It's very problematical. It's going to turn whether they like it or not. The average American is going to be forced to become a speculator or a gambler because most people don't know how to speculate properly, trying to outrace the drop in value of the US dollar. So this is a really, really serious thing.
Well, Doug, I'd like to shift gears a minute because you were kind enough to share a copy of your book, The Preparation, with me. And if you are listening to today's broadcast and you know of a high school student or a young adult, certainly it's a book that you're going to want to get your hands on. Doug, first of all, give our listeners a bit of a background as to what motivated you to write The Preparation.
Well, look, I graduated from college, Georgetown University, in 1968. And even then, I thought it was a misallocation of my time and my parents' money. And in those days, college was affordable, so it really wasn't that much money. But as I got older, I came to think of it as being not just a misallocation, but a waste. And I said that on the Phil Donahue show the day before the national election when Phil had me on all by myself the day before Reagan was elected. And when I said that to the audience, everybody thinks that got to get an education. That's the way to, you know, improve and guarantee you're going to do well in life. The audience booed me previously. They liked what I had to say. But now I'll go further. College has become such a cesspool, number one, and an expensive cesspool that it's not just a waste of time, it's actively detrimental to your future. Most of the professors in college are woke or Marxists. Uh, it's basically just delaying. It's a halfway house. After you get out of high school, you have no skills. You're not qualified for anything but working at McDonald's, quite frankly, when you get out of high school. And 4 years of college and indoctrination at huge cost just delays you're getting into the real world. So what I've done in the preparation is not just try to convince young men especially, but young women too, um, not to go to college because they'll get out of college with an albatross of debt around their necks that they can't get rid of, can't even declare bankruptcy to get rid of it. A lot of bad ideas. Uh, and what we've done, actually, there's three of us that have written the book, is tell young men exactly what they should do or can do with that 4 years of time to learn practical skills, to become the kind of men that they want to be. Uh, and by the time those 4 years are through, they'll have vast experience and a bunch of money in their genes, I think, and be well on their way to being successful entrepreneurs, not trying to scramble for somebody to give them a job, which is a bad idea. I mean, you shouldn't go looking for a job. You should already be able to be in a position where you can produce goods and services other people want. So I think it's a really important book because American society is is getting very frayed around the edges and even in the around the middle, it's weakening. And this is a time when especially young men can't afford to make a mistake with artificial intelligence and so forth. All these standard jobs, they're not going to exist anymore. So this book is a guidebook for what they should do. And I hope that your listeners, because I guess most of us are about the same age, around and about retirement age, uh, should buy this for your son or grandson or whoever so that they don't walk down the wrong road.
So, Doug, very, very interesting what you say, and I'd like to digress just for a moment because I think it's still this way, but certainly it's been this way for a while. Anyone with a pulse who's enrolled in college has been able to get almost unlimited financing. To what extent has that devalued what was once a valuable college diploma?
Yeah, that's a good point, Dennis. Uh, Look, years ago, uh, going to college was of some value because few people did it. And the things that you would learn in college uh, tended to have some foundation in reality. Now, so many courses in college are basically gimmies. Uh, the professors graduate everybody. They don't fail anybody these days, quite frankly, which is especially shameful because most of the courses people take are BA courses like well, they'll take English where they won't even read the classics. They'll read some BS current books or sociology or psychology, things that are made up, or political science, uh, things that are of absolutely no value uh, in the world today. So it used to be college was different. It used to be it sets you apart. Now everybody goes off to college, if they're from the middle class anyway. Uh, because they don't know what else to do with their time. You can you can get a dead-end job, or you can join the military, or hang out in your mom's basement playing video games and watching porn. So yeah, going to college, I guess, is better than most of those things, but it's a very bad idea today. Years ago, it was of value. It meant something. Now it's become so degraded and so negative that and so costly that it's foolish. It's a tragic mistake to go to college. I'm not talking about somebody who's motivated for a STEM degree, science, technology, engineering, math, uh, formal discipline, lab work, things like that. Okay, I can see that. You can't practice medicine without those things. I'd argue you might be able to practice law because Abraham Lincoln was an excellent lawyer. He never went to law school. Most people in the 19th century never went to law school. It didn't exist. But still, engineering, medicine, things like that. Okay. But we're not talking about that because few people take those things.
So I'm talking today with Mr. Doug Casey. If you're just tuning in or you missed it, I'd encourage you to check out his work at internationalman.com. And he also has a podcast on YouTube titled Doug Casey's Take. And again, that's on YouTube. So, Doug, in the time we have left, you mentioned that this 4 years can be used for something far more valuable than college. Could you give the listeners maybe a little bit of a glimpse as to what they'll learn when they dig into your book, The Preparation?
Well, we have structured it so that if you take the preparation, you should have the equivalent of a Bachelor of Arts degree, a Bachelor of Science degree, and an MBA. Because uh, the courses, the academic courses that you'll listen to and take, are by the world's best professors giving command performances, not just some guy at the college that maybe you'll even fall asleep during his lecture. So that's number one. You'll get a much better classical education. But the heart of this thing is we've divided the 4 years that people spend in college into 16, we call them cycles. And in addition to the academic part, which I just described, which is, I think, better than any college, um, you'll learn real world skills. Like uh, my co-author, Matt Smith's son, Max, and Max is a co-author of this too, uh, learned to be an EMT. And this is a lifelong skill to learn how to save people's lives. That's one thing he did. That qualified him during one summer to he's only 18, was only 18, to be an EMT of a firefighting team. He earned $600 a day uh, and no expenses. That's all paid for us. That's a very good start. You'll learn to be a pilot. You'll go off and learn to ride horses and herd steers. That's the cowboy sector. You'll learn to build a house. You'll go for 5 weeks to Maine and learn construction from the foundation up to the wiring and the plumbing. You'll learn to be a chef going to Florence, Italy. And not that you want to be Gordon Ramsay or Wolfgang Puck, but you'll know how to do it if you want. You'll learn to drive heavy equipment by taking a course for a month in Florida. You'll learn to weld and metalwork by taking another course in Ontario, Canada. You'll go to, and this is the next thing Max is doing. He's going to Thailand for 3 months to learn Muay Thai, so that unlike most young men, he'll be a semi-professional fighter. Everybody should know how to defend themselves. One of the things he's done is learned to be a sailor. He'd never been on a sailboat before, but he sailed from the Falkland Islands around Cape Horn and back. Now this was a real trial by fire. What this book is trying to do with these things and more that I could list is to set young men with a trial by fire, with a hero's journey, which we don't have in our society anymore. There are too many young guys who are just kind of like in the doldrums, kind of mama's boys, never done anything, never been anywhere, never really learned anything to do anything. They can't do anything. And if you can't do anything, you can't become the kind of man that you should be, which is what this book is really about. It's a lesson in morality as well. So I'd really like to urge everybody listening to get the book and give it to a young man that you want to see go somewhere, or save him from perdition anyway.
The book again is The Preparation. I'm chatting today with Mr. Doug Casey. You can also check out Doug's work at internationalman.com, and I'd encourage you to check out his podcast titled Doug Casey's Take, which you can find on YouTube. Doug, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love to catch up with you again down the road.
I feel the same. Thanks, Dennis.
We will return after these words. Hey, thanks for listening in today. I'd like to invite you to get a complimentary copy of my new Retirement Rules book. The new Retirement Rules book outlines the historical inflation-deflation cycle that I talked about on today's program and offers you specific strategies to consider using in your situation. I'd love to send you a copy of the book absolutely free. All you need to do to get your copy is go to requestyourbook.com. The website again is requestyourbook.com. When you visit the website, just let me know where to send your book, absolutely free. I'll also send you some bonus information as well. So again, requestyourbook.com to get your complimentary copy of the new Retirement Rules book. Welcome back to RLA Radio. I'm Dennis Tubbergen. Glad you decided to listen in today. Hey, as I close today's program, just want to remind you that you can go to retirementlifestyleadvocates.com. You can create a free login and you can get access to the free weekly Portfolio Watch newsletter, as well as the Headline Roundup newscast that I do every Monday at noon live, but the replays are posted there as well. The website again is retirementlifestyleadvocates.com. The login can be created absolutely free. The resources there are free. I'd encourage you to check it out. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again next week with a brand new program, and I'll be interviewing Mr. Marty Armstrong. You won't want to miss it.